Have you ever walked into a church only to feel that something was off? You look up, and there it is. A triangle. An eye. Watching you. Radiating light. It's supposed to represent God watching over us, right? But what if I told you that this symbol isn't Christian at all? What if I told you that the eye you've seen carved into altars, printed on stained glass windows, and even featured in religious paintings, isn't the Eye of Providence? It's the Eye of Horus, an ancient Egyptian symbol of power, protection, and hidden knowledge. And the truth behind why this eye appears inside Christian churches might shake the very foundation of what you believe. This isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's history. Suppressed, rewritten, and rebranded. In this video, we'll uncover the shocking connections between Egyptian mysticism and early Christian symbolism. You'll discover how powerful elites throughout history used sacred geometry and occult symbols to control what people believe, even in places of worship. What you're about to learn has been hidden in plain sight for centuries. And once you understand the truth behind the Eye of Horus in Christianity, you will never see your faith, or your church, the same way again. Long before the cross became a symbol of salvation, the ancient Egyptians gazed upon a different kind of eye, one that promised power, protection, and divine insight. The Eye of Horus, also known as the Wadjet, wasn't just a decorative motif carved into stone walls or painted on sarcophagi. It was a sacred key. According to mythology, Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky, lost his left eye in a battle with Set, the god of chaos. But that eye wasn't just healed, it was transformed. Restored by Thoth, the god of wisdom, the eye became more than a symbol. It was believed to hold magical properties, capable of warding off evil and revealing spiritual truth. Egyptians used it in rituals, placed it on the dead to guide them to the afterlife, and engraved it into amulets for divine protection. But here's the strange part. The structure of the Eye of Horus wasn't random. Each part of the eyebrow, pupil, tear, was assigned a fraction. Together, they formed an equation that nearly equaled one whole. To the Egyptians, this represented a mystical understanding of wholeness and cosmic balance. Now pause for a second and think, why would a pagan symbol that predates Christianity by thousands of years reappear in modern religious architecture? Why does it show up in cathedrals, and paintings, even on the Great Seal of the United States? Here's the truth most people miss. The Eye of Horus wasn't destroyed when Christianity rose, it was absorbed. Rebranded. Masked behind names like the All-Seeing Eye or the Eye of God. But its core meaning, illumination, secret knowledge, and divine sight, remained intact. And the reason it still appears today? It's not by accident. It's because those in power understood something the masses never did. Symbols are not just art, they are tools. They bypass logic and speak directly to the subconscious. Which is why the Eye of Horus was never meant to disappear, it was meant to hide in plain sight. And churches, with their rich iconography and ancient architecture, became the perfect stage for this spiritual camouflage. Now that you know what the Eye of Horus really is, the next question is, how did it enter Christianity at all? That's what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Symbols were never meant to be decorative. They were languages for the soul, designed to bypass the noise of speech and pierce directly into the unconscious mind. Long before alphabets took shape, humanity spoke through signs. And in the ancient world, no religion ignored the power of visual symbolism. From the Egyptian Ankh, representing life, to the spirals found in Celtic tombs symbolizing eternity, ancient priests and sages understood a truth we've forgotten. A symbol can carry power. A symbol can transmit energy. And a symbol can command belief. This is why ancient temples, from Babylon to Greece, were layered with geometrical codes, sacred measurements, and iconography. Because they knew that symbols shaped reality. Not through magic tricks, but through perception. What you believe is shaped by what you see. And what you see can be programmed. Now consider this, when Christianity began to spread, it didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was born into a world saturated with sacred symbols. A world where the sun was worshipped, where gods had eyes of power, and where temples were aligned with the stars. The early church fathers were faced with a dilemma. How could they convert pagans without tearing apart the deeply embedded symbolic systems people already trusted? The answer was not to destroy, but to transform. Pagan holidays became Christian feasts. Ancient temples became cathedrals. And the symbols, they were given new names, new meanings. The halo? Once the crown of solar deities. The fish? A pre-Christian fertility symbol. The eye? No longer Horus, now the eye of God. But the essence remained. Because symbols, once activated, don't easily die. Here's where it gets deeper. Many of the most revered Christian sites, like the Vatican, were built over pagan temples. This wasn't just practical. It was spiritual engineering. By placing the new faith atop the old, the church absorbed the energy and authority of the past, cloaking it in sacred robes. And so, the language of symbols, Egyptian, Babylonian, Greek, was encoded into the very foundations of Christianity. Not to worship the old gods, but to tap into the universal archetypes that moved the masses. And that's how the Eye of Horus didn't disappear. It just changed masks. In the next chapter, we'll see when this transformation happened, and why. Let's step back to the 4th century AD. Rome is in crisis. Pagan temples are everywhere. The cult of Mithras is thriving. The people are spiritually fractured, divided between ancient gods and the rising message of Christ. Enter Emperor Constantine. In one of history's boldest political moves, Constantine legalizes Christianity through the Edict of Milan, and later makes it the official religion of the Roman Empire. But here's what they don't teach you in Sunday school. Constantine wasn't a devoted Christian. He was a strategist. He didn't destroy the old beliefs, he repackaged them. And in doing so, he ensured a smoother transition from paganism to Christianity. Temples dedicated to Apollo and Jupiter became churches. Priests of Mithras became clergy. And the symbols? They were rebranded, not removed. The sun disk behind the head of Horus? Now it crowned Christ and the saints, reimagined as halos. Saints reimagined as halos. The mother goddess Isis holding Horus on her lap? Now became the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus. And most importantly, the Eye of Horus, the divine watchful eye, became the Eye of Providence, often depicted within a triangle, an allusion to the Trinity. But this wasn't just about aesthetics. It was psychological warfare. The church absorbed these symbols to make the new faith feel ancient, familiar, powerful. The masses didn't abandon their old gods, they saw their symbols carried into the new temples, only with new meanings. The transition didn't erase pagan power. It baptized it. This is why, to this day, if you look closely inside ancient cathedrals, especially in Europe, you'll find Egyptian obelisks, zodiac mosaics, and eyes carved into sacred altars. It's not heresy. It's history. The line between pagan and Christian isn't a wall, it's a mirror. And the Eye of Horus stands at the center of this fusion, a symbol born in Egypt, carried through secret societies, and etched into the very architecture of churches and chapels today. The question isn't whether the church used pagan symbols. The question is, why did they choose to keep the eye? And that answer might be more spiritual and more dangerous than you think. In the next chapter, we'll explore exactly why the Eye of Horus continues to appear inside Christian churches and who is placing it there. By now, you've likely realized something. The Eye of Horus didn't simply vanish with the rise of Christianity. It evolved. And it survived. But how does a pagan symbol from ancient Egypt end up engraved in stained glass, painted behind altars, and even placed at the top of church domes? The answer lies not in chance, but in intentional design. Many of the architects and artists commissioned to build Europe's most iconic cathedrals weren't just builders, they were initiates. Members of secret societies like the Freemasons, groups deeply influenced by Egyptian mysticism, Kabbalah, and sacred geometry. They believed that God speaks through mathematics, that the universe is constructed through divine proportions, and that symbols are the blueprints of spiritual truth. For them, placing the Eye of Horus, whether hidden in a vault arch, in the oculus of a dome, or within the iris of a saint, was not an act of rebellion. It was an act of reverence. They believed the eye represented divine sight, the all-seeing, omnipresent force that witnesses all human action. But more than that, they believed it held spiritual power. And here's where things turn darker. While the church officially named this symbol the Eye of Providence, its placement inside triangles, above the altar, or within sunbursts, mirrors exactly how the Eye of Horus was used in ancient rituals. To protect sacred spaces. To invoke higher consciousness. To signal hidden knowledge accessible only to the initiated. Some of the greatest cathedrals in the world, Notre Dame, St. Peter's Basilica, and even the Washington National Cathedral, contain visual references to the eye. And in nearly all cases, the public isn't told what they're truly seeing. Why? Because these symbols are meant to speak to the soul, not the rational mind. Most people look, but don't see. But the initiated? They see everything. The eye is not passive. It's a mark of authority. It watches. It judges. And for some, it guides. So next time you step into a church, look up. That eye staring back at you may not just be God watching. It may be Horus, cloaked in Christian robes. And that leads us to a deeper truth, one that very few are willing to say out loud. In the next chapter, we reveal what the church never wanted you to know. There's a reason the Eye of Horus still appears in sacred places. And it has nothing to do with art. It has everything to do with power. Because those who understand symbols, those who use them strategically, can shape what the masses believe without ever speaking a word. Let that sink in. While churchgoers pray beneath frescoes and stained glass, the elite are practicing a different kind of worship, one built not on sermons, but on symbology, on energy, on the silent agreement between those who know and those who never will. This isn't just spiritual. It's psychological warfare. The Eye of Horus is a control mechanism. It reminds you that you're being watched, judged, tracked. And not just by God, but by those who claim to speak in His name. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, not all who wear robes of holiness serve the same light. Many early bishops, popes, and theologians were not just spiritual men, they were alchemists, astrologers, and adepts of secret knowledge. The Vatican, for example, holds one of the largest collections of esoteric manuscripts in the world, locked away in private archives the public will never see. Why? Because knowledge is power. And symbolic knowledge is the most dangerous of all. The Eye of Horus didn't survive because of accident or coincidence. It was preserved. Passed down by secret orders. Hidden in plain sight. Used to create an illusion of divine authority, when in truth, it was a code, a signature for those who were part of the inner circle. They don't want you to know this because if you understand how symbols work, you awaken. You begin to question the rituals, the architecture, the traditions you were told were sacred. You stop blindly following and start seeing. And that's the real threat. Because an awakened soul is harder to control. So the eye remains. Watching. Not always as a guardian. Sometimes as a gatekeeper. The question is, what is it guarding? And who placed it there? In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together and show you how once you recognize the eye, you'll start seeing it everywhere. And that's when the real journey begins. Something changes once you've seen it. Not just with your eyes, but with your spirit. The Eye of Horus, hidden in cathedrals, stamped on money, engraved in stone, no longer feels like an artistic flourish. It becomes what it always was, a message meant for those who could read it. And now you can. You walk through the doors of a church and you see more than stained glass, you see a coded universe. A spiritual architecture where symbols are carefully placed to guide, watch, or control. You look at religious art, and suddenly halos feel like sun discs. The triangle above the altar feels like a pyramid. The Eye of God now feels ancient, Egyptian, powerful, and intentional. This isn't just awareness. It's awakening. Because once you realize symbols were never neutral, you begin to reclaim your own perception. You start asking, who taught me what to believe? Why did they choose those words, those rituals, those icons? And most of all, what have I accepted without ever questioning? Here's the unsettling truth. You were never meant to see the eye. Not like this. You were meant to kneel beneath it, to accept it, to fear it, or to love it, without ever knowing where it came from. But now you do. And that realization carries both freedom and responsibility. Because symbols are not inherently evil. The Eye of Horus, in its origin, was a symbol of healing, vision, and wholeness. It only became dangerous when used as a tool of spiritual domination, when hidden in plain sight to manipulate rather than enlighten. So what do you do with this knowledge? You begin to see the world differently. You question what others call normal. You speak a silent language that very few understand. And in doing so, you awaken a part of yourself that religion alone could never reach. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And from this point on, every cathedral, every coin, every artwork will whisper truths most people are too afraid to hear. The eye doesn't just watch. Now, you watch it back. You made it to the end. That alone sets you apart. Because most people aren't ready to question symbols they've grown up trusting. They'd rather stay comfortable, even if it means living blind. But you chose to see. And now, a door has opened, one that can't be closed again. The Eye of Horus inside Christian churches isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's a trace, a fingerprint, of how ancient power structures continue to shape our reality under the guise of faith. It's not about hating religion. It's about understanding the game behind the ritual. The ancient codes buried in plain sight. The messages only the few were ever meant to understand. And now that you've seen the truth, will you look away? Or will you keep digging? Ask yourself, why is the same symbol used in Christianity, Freemasonry, Egyptian mysticism, and even global governments? Who benefits from a world where we worship symbols we don't understand? And most of all, what else are we not seeing? This video was just a key. But there are more doors. If this awakens something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this truth. Spread it. And most importantly, look again at everything around you, your church, your currency, your beliefs. Because when you start to see through the veil, you'll realize the truth was never hidden. It was just coded. And the eye? It doesn't belong to them anymore. Now, it belongs to you.